So we are live, so I'll go ahead and get started. Just real quick, thank you everybody for watching. My name is Allison Bowman. I'm the Administrative Assistant for the Arts Council of Johnson County, and I am here today with Stephen Curtis with UrbanWorks in KCK. And we may be joined in a little bit by Deoslin Tott. So we'll just see what happens. But hi, Stephen. Thank you for joining us. And I'm super excited to talk about UrbanWorks. I've actually just heard of you. I don't know why I've never heard of you until recently. And the work that you guys do just sounds amazing. So I'm really excited to talk about it. So my first question to you is, tell us about yourself.
Oh boy.
Your background, to sum it up a little bit, and how did you get to where you are now?
By mistake, pretty much. I kind of drift on things. About every 8 or 9 years, I have to kind of change what I do. Something else interests me, and I have to pursue it in some way. So, first real job I had after I got out of college, actually, was teaching respiratory therapy at the KU Med Center, and I was there for about 9 years. And then I moved on to doing some lobbying for the Respiratory Therapy Society, worked on some statewide and local races, political races. And then I decided I wanted to be a photographer and started pursuing that. And I went around to all these photographers in town trying to get side work. And no one, they say, well, the photography is nice, but it's not what we do. We're commercial photographers, I had things from Eureka Springs and, all that stuff you do. Yeah. And finally, I found a guy that I was so impressed with his work. He had a national reputation. And I said, I'll work here for free. I'll sweep your floors if you let me work here and see what goes on. And when I called, they put the phone down, came back, and he goes, see you Monday at 7. Nice. So I swept floors for about a week, and then I got to work in the dark room and advanced to working with another shooter. And over the course of 3 years, I moved up to working on his team. And then I started doing pre-production work. I go out ahead of time, help with the shoot, and wrap everything up at the end. Then I had a studio. I opened my own studio when my son was born in 1990. My wife and I worked there for about 12 years. And my son wasn't getting any art in school, so I wanted to try to change that. So I started teaching in inner city Catholic schools, and it was the worst time. It was the art on the cart thing. Yeah. You got 45 minutes from dry to dry and get out of here.
Yeah, oh, awful.
I hated it.
I don't know how teachers do that.
I don't either. But they didn't have anything else. I mean, I called friends that were in advertising and said, give me your old letterhead that you update all the time. They'd give it to me. So we had paper, and had the kids, showed them how to make their own charcoal with sticks on the barbecue grill and stuff like that. And then about 2005, I guess, I got a call from a teacher in a village in Alaska named White Mountain. It's a village of about 150 people, 70 miles east of Nome. And they said, would you come up here for 3 weeks and work with our community and our kids and do photography with them and all? I said, sure, And so I headed out, and after about changing planes about 3 times and 15 hours later, I'm in a little small plane out in the middle of nowhere, and we land on top of a hill, and it's like 4 feet of snow. It's 20 below, and they let me out all of a sudden. And are you there? There we go. I think Deoslin's trying to call in, I think. Oh. Maybe she's trying to call me. I don't know. Anyway, I thought when I got out of the plane, I was looking around. I go, what have I done? I need to do more research before I say yes to things. Yeah. I'm going to die in this place. I don't know what's going to happen. But they took me in, and it was really an experience I hadn't had before. Every night they'd send me around to a different family to have dinner with them. So it was all the local cuisine. So you had caribou, moose, seal, things like that. And it was just amazing. I worked with the kids and the community and the teachers, and did my own exhibit as well, and had a great time. And a year later, I got another call. So anyway, long story short, for the next 5 years, I went to Alaska for 3 weeks at a time and would be in different villages. I was in Wasilla a couple of times and out in the Pribilof Islands, out in Bering Sea, was out there. Just amazing experiences, just incredible experiences that I hadn't felt before. And it was that real kind of community thing. You know, the elders in the villages run the community and they just meet in a school cafeteria, sit down, have coffee. There's no gavel in, there's no notes, there's no president. It's like, hey, we need to do this, and then it gets done. And I like that simplicity a lot. So I did that, and then I came back. About that time, I had a small studio in town, primarily working with high schools, helping them with photography and Photoshop and stuff like that, and produce exhibits. And some people came by for a local community development corporation, asked me if I wanted to be a community organizer. And I said, I don't know what that is, but I think they put bars on windows and locks on doors. I'm not into that. No thanks. And they said, no, you can do whatever you want. And I go, well, okay, I'll use art as a tool to engage youth in the community and then challenge them to use art to solve problems in their own community. And we kind of went from there, took off for about 10 years. That's where I met Deoslin. She was probably 13, I think, when I met her. And she was a good kid, already on her way, doing volunteer services and things like that, made great grades. And she just kind of kicked in and would work with us on projects and everything. And one day I challenged them I said, you guys need to come up with a project your own. You know, what do you want to do? Use art in a way that solves a problem for you. And they decided that there was a lot of gang graffiti on garages and alleyways. And I had grown up where I grew up, we played in alleyways all the time. And these were overgrown. The city had kind of passed them on to citizens. And they were kind of like, well, we'll just let it grow out there until somebody raises an alarm.
Right.
So I said, okay, we'll find a way to pay for it. You guys can do it. You have to go out and ask for permission. And I said, get 4 people on this block. We're ready to go. So they went out. They could only get 3. And then they realized I lived on the block and asked me if I'd do it. And I said, of course. So they started, and they did over the next 4 or 5 years, they did 51 murals in alleyways downtown here in urban communities. Wow. And then we'd put a solar powered motion detection light on it so that if somebody came up to it, damage it or whatever, the light would come on.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. We, in our own alley here, the lights kept coming on after they did it that next fall. I'm going, what is going on out there? And it was families bringing their kids by to see the murals at night before they go to bed, because they had a circus mural and they had different things, one with fish on it, stuff. And it was really a nice program. She was in charge of that whole thing. And in the summers, we did art classes on street corners, different ones all the time, and just flyer and say, hey, we're going to be here next week. We got all the goods. Come on down. Nice. And we ran about 18, 20 kids most of the time, had a 70-year-old lady that showed up every time working on her portfolio. So it's never too late, you know?
Yeah.
So that went well. So that's kind of where that's at.
Very cool. So was the mural, that group, is that Art Squad? Is that what Deoslin started? Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Awesome. So this is kind of like a back end question, just curiosity, but what was it like to have to find funding for that? Was it like the community that pitched in, or were you, I mean, you said you lobbied, so I'm sure you're good at, making your case, but just curious.
At first it came out of my own pocket.
Okay.
And then I realized, because I didn't really know anything about grants, and then somebody told me about getting a grant. So I took a course at UMKC on grant writing, and I'm not a great grant writer, but I knew how to put a narrative and a budget together. So I wrote a grant for I think it's called Graffiti Hurts. And it's a one-time grant. It's about $2,000 or $3,000. It was enough to buy paint and some motion detection lights and all. So that's how we started with that. And then as time went on, I was able to write more grants and became involved with NeighborWorks America, which is a national organization for communities. And they had all kinds of grants like that. And LISC here in town has the Neighborhood Lift Grant. That's a couple $1,000s. So we got a lot of those. And then the company got a really good grant writer. So we kind of partnered together and we were able to support the farm and all those other things we did later on.
Okay, cool. That's awesome. Yeah, grants are super helpful, especially when you have a good story to tell and a good
Right.
response. So
Yeah, they got too much paperwork for the most part, but that's okay.
yeah,
I get it. You got to do
some
it.
of the applications are a little tricky, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's awesome. So you mentioned the farm. Do you want to talk about the farm a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Um, short story here. Um, I was hired to do one community, one neighborhood, St. Peter's neighborhood, and they had already established what the goals were for that community. So I went and helped them accomplish those goals in about a year and a half. And then we were told by the funders, say, well, at the tipping point, you're there, it's all good, see you later. And they cut the funding. And I went to my boss and I said, look, if we had 3 or 4 good neighborhoods around us, that might work, but we don't. This is the better of 4 or 5. And it's going to work the opposite way, then go forward. And he said, keep doing what you're doing. I like it. We'll find a way. So then we opened up 4 more neighborhoods. We call it the Grandview Corridor. It sits between Minnesota and Central, the river, and 18th Street. And we just spent our time. I told my boss, I said, my job's in the community. I got to be on the street. I can't be in the office. It's crazy. Right. So we agreed once a week, I'd be in the office for a meeting, and we kept in touch. But we were just out talking to people all the time, talking to the kids, and we went into the Bethany neighborhood, and I always look for an asset, so there was a school. That's always an asset. You got to work with the school and the kids. Yeah. So M.E. Pearson School was at 11th and Split Log. And I said, well, let's do something in this area. I went to the city and said, I need some space. And they had a couple thousand lots in the land bank that they were trying to figure out what to do with. And finally, I found 3 lots real close together. They were 25-foot lots. It was only about, altogether was only about 100 feet wide. And said, I want to do something here. And they said, okay. And then I talked to the kids and asked them, where's the fruit trees in the neighborhood? No fruit trees. Where's the berry bushes? No berry bushes. Where do you get fruit and bananas? Mom brings them home, that type of thing. Yeah. So I started talking to other neighbors. It's 40% poverty. The school is like 95% lunch free, qualifies for that. And I go, how about an urban farm? Or how about a farm? And they go, great. So we had done a community garden once before. Everybody wants them. It's kind of like kale. Everybody wants you to grow kale, and you grow kale and you can't get rid of your kale. Right. So the community garden's kind of like that. So we decided that we weren't going to open it up for everybody. Anybody could work that wanted to, but we were going to manage the farm itself. So we connected with the school. I tried to get help there, and everything was no. And a preschool teacher was walking by in the hall when I was talking, and she goes, well, what about preschoolers? I go, I'll have them, bring them over. So every week they would come over. They germinated seeds for us. They helped plant plants. They would help us harvest. And they'd always, at the end of the season, they'd always harvest about 60 pounds of greens and lettuce and all. They'd clean them on the spot, which is an amazing thing to watch. Yeah. And then they would take them to the school, and then the school would again clean through them. And then they would put them into their lunches the next day. Wow. So it was a whole cycle for them, And because the little kids got to do it, some of the big kids wanted to help. So we'd see them after school and on weekends. And, it was volunteers for us. I mean, grants are certainly important to kick things off, but you need a workforce. And we just didn't have it. It was DeAustin and I and a couple other young kids. So we depended on volunteers. We'd get about 3,000 hours of volunteers a year, and they helped us play out the farm. So the grant said you have to grow 700 pounds of produce and give it away to the neighborhood. We grew 700. I took a class. I became a master gardener to learn about what I was doing. And we improved the soil, our techniques and all. And then we started growing right around 1,600 pounds of produce a year. Wow. That we would harvest, put it in buckets or put it in a wheelbarrow, send the kids up the neighborhood with it, knocking on doors, handing out lettuce and melons and carrots and tomatoes and all that. And then we'd set up out in front of the school when they came to pick the kids up, and we'd have tomatoes and everything out there, and they could take them with them as they went. Yeah. And that was really enjoyable. That was really fun. I really liked that. We put some bees on there. We started shifting into more kind of the whole picture environmentally as opposed to just one sector. Yeah. And then we were able to get a lot across the street because of the work that we had done. We found a sponsor. And we put in an orchard across the street with a sitting area and everything for the
Okay.
kids. Yeah.
Cool.
So that was good. That was one of the harder projects to leave when I left the organization, but it's still going. So I'm happy about that.
Nice. That sounds
Yeah.
awesome.
It is. And it still is to this day. You know, it's run different and everything like that, but they're still involving kids, they're still feeding people, and you still have this introduction to the kids into food, how important it is. Now, I have to admit, they like bugs as much as they like growing food.
Yeah, I
But
was gonna ask.
you got those on a farm too.
Yep.
Sometimes they would come over and I wouldn't necessarily have anything they could do. So I just start turning over soil and I gave magnifying glasses. That was an hour.
Yep.
They were gone. Yeah, exactly. They were so fun. And when we would plant, they'd mix everything up. And when they would germinate the seeds, everything get mixed up. So we'd have maybe a sunflower, and then we'd have a tomato plant. And then we'd maybe have some melons or something. It was just always a lot of flowers. I always believe in a lot of flowers being mixed in. And it was just a very nice, kind of calming, relaxing place.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun. One of my most fun projects.
Yeah. I love the idea of community gardens. I think that's awesome.
I do too.
I wish I had a better green thumb. I'm not a very good plant person, but I love them.
Yeah. Well, they can be tough, but it's so much of it's about the soil, really.
Yeah.
You really have to get something good going there.
Yeah.
And what we find in a lot of them is that you get a community garden going, everybody's excited, they're partying, everything's going, and then you get around to August, and it's hot, and it's humid, and the bugs are there, and some of the vegetables don't look so good anymore.
Yep.
And everybody's gone.
Yep.
And then there's a fall cleanup, and then you get all excited about starting again in the spring. So it's just a big cycle.
The cycle in itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like, when you were starting this project, you went and took a class on gardening, and then it sounds like you are very motivated to learn things about everything. Is that a true statement?
That's pretty close. And
Yeah.
actually, that came about because I was a terrible student in high school. And after about sixth grade, social, football, I was fine with all that. I didn't care for much of anything else. And because of that, I had lived in Wyandotte County, and my folks moved to Johnson County halfway through my junior year. And I made friends there, and all of a sudden the talk was about what college you going to. Have you already gotten your acceptance? And I'm what's that about?
Yeah.
And I talked to my dad about it. He said, well, he says, you can live here as long as you want, but you're going to have to figure that out on your own. And I thought, well, okay. So I just went off and got a job working for a surveying crew that I really liked. And then I got a draft notice, and I ended up in Vietnam. And then one day I'm there in a place I didn't want to be. It's kind of a dark time. And I said, you know what? I should have had a plan, because if I don't have a plan, somebody's going to give me a plan, and it's probably not in my interest. So it was at that point I decided that I hadn't learned how to learn when I was in school. And lecturing to me is, my wife will tell you, you might as well just forget about it. Once the wall goes up, nothing's happening.
Yep.
So I kind of have to see it. I can't just read about it. I have to see it. But once I see it, then I can read about it and I understand it. So I decided that self-learning was really important after that. And my interest really blew up after that in all kinds of directions.
Yeah, cool. So besides Split Log Farm and the Art Squad, we talked about them, what other projects have you worked on with UrbanWorks?
One of the big ones, these actually, UrbanWorks has only been around for about 4 years.
Okay.
So most of these projects started with the CDC, and then we evolved into UrbanWorks, kind of continuing the same thing. But another big one was, one of my favorite ones as well, was the Epic Clay Studio on Strawberry Hill.
Yeah.
It was one of those freaky things. I had a friend, I was donating some time over at the blind school had an art club, and I was donating some time over there. And the lady that was running that at the time called me one day and said, hey, they're getting rid of all the ceramic equipment over here. Do you have some place we can put it, store it, see what happens? And I go, I don't know. So I called my boss and he says, yeah, we've got a storefront on 6th Street. You can put it in there until somebody wants to rent it. It hadn't been rented 7 or 8 years. And I go, okay.
Right.
So we put it in there. And as it's coming in, I go, there's 5 wheels, there's a kiln. I go, this could go live. I know
Yeah.
nothing about ceramics, but this can go live. And I told my boss I was going to do it. I needed 20,000 to renovate it. And he goes, you can do it, but I don't have 20,000 for you.
Yeah.
So I went around, I found some ladies in the neighborhood that had taken ceramics in college, but had children and hadn't done that in a long time. Their kids were going to school and they wanted to get back into it. And they volunteered to teach for free. So
Wow.
that was a big relief. And then I met at the art club a sculptor that was just graduating from KU with a master's in fine arts, an amazing sculptor. He made this human head, perfect, out of ceramics that was 6 foot tall.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Holy
And
cow.
he was picked as one of the best coming out of school at the time. So this thing toured around the country. And I said, teach me about ceramics. And he said, well, we're going to start you reclaiming clay over here.
Yep.
And after a while, I said, well, this is very therapeutic, but I want to learn more.
Yeah.
And anyway, it just kind of went from that. It started out and it started drawing more people. And then we were able to tag in with some grants on that, would cover them for a year or two. Not so much utilities and stuff, but it would cover supplies and things like that.
Yeah.
And with free instruction, I would do instructions, particularly with the blind school and kind of mid-range teenagers and all, and I tried to bring kids that are different together because I want them to see that, hey, when you all get in the same room doing the same thing, it's all us, that's all that really matters.
Right.
And so that was really enjoyable. And then as time went on, I got more involved with the farm and other things. Dioslin took over that part of it, and she ran art camps there in the summer, 4 or 5 day art camps. And we had KU had helped us build a stage out back, which honestly, it was used mostly by neighborhood kids to ride grocery carts down the ramp and crash. I kept finding all these grocery carts. I go, what the hell is going on here? And they go, oh yeah, we come down, we play here. I go, okay, all right.
Well,
So you got to ask the kids what they want to.
yeah, that's awesome.
But yeah, that was a really good one, and it's existing today. They've the teachers are even getting paid and everything, so it's really nice.
Nice, that's awesome.
Yeah.
What is, since Dioslin's not here, I won't ask too much about her, but I don't want to make you talk about her background.
Oh, she's super. She's super.
She sounds awesome and really motivated and driven, and it sounds like she's around my age probably, which it's awesome when younger people get involved in the arts. And
oh yeah,
I've always been passionate, so I respect that. But how did she grow up in Wyandotte County? And you said you met her when she was about 13, so she was probably around at the high school and just involved in everything.
She came here from Guatemala when she was 3.
Okay.
Her father was a minister, and I think they lived in Armdale initially, and then they moved up just a couple of blocks from my house actually. And I went into office one day, and she was sitting there, and I said, what are you doing? She says, well, I'm a volunteer here and all. And I said, well, what do you do? And she said, well, I file things, I answer the phone and all. And she was obviously brilliant, really smart, very motivated. And I go, no. So I went and told my boss, I said, I'm taking her with me and we're going to go out in the community. And okay. So off we went. And that's just where we spent all of our time. And she's bilingual. I am not. I struggle with English. And she was great in the neighborhoods. We'd be working in neighborhoods that are 60-65% Latino, and other neighborhoods that, Kansas City, Kansas is full of immigrants and refugees. Every little hill, you got the Croatian hill, you have Polish, Slovenian, Bosnians, it just goes on and on, Russians and everything. And so she was really, really great with that. And like you say, she was bringing a younger attitude. I was mid-60s at the time. And the younger kids are going to listen to her, but they're going to listen to me just because they speak the same language, basically.
Right.
Yeah. So she was always motivated. She went to Sumner. She took the baccalaureate program there. She excelled. She went to KU. And she had originally planned to go into med school. She had the grades for it and all, but the program she was wanting to get in, because she wasn't a citizen, she wasn't able to get into it.
Okay.
She currently became a citizen just within the last 6 months.
Nice.
So that's really nice for her as well. But yeah, she's a great gal. She works hard, and she cares about her community. She cares about her community.
Yeah, I can tell.
Yeah.
So now she's in charge of UrbanWorks, and you
Mhm.
still work with UrbanWorks, but you're not kind of like, she's the one who's, in charge or whatever.
Right.
What do you guys have coming up? Do you have any projects in the works or anything like that? What are you guys working on now?
This summer she did. She also partnered with and is chairman of the board for the Latino Arts Foundation.
Okay.
So we've been partnering with them on some projects. She ran 3 summer camps, art camps this summer. And we also were involved in the Literacy Festival out of Wichita. We did some literacy sessions, which is kind of, if you don't mind, I'll just kind of sidebar here a little bit. But it was kind of a fluke thing that we got involved because it wasn't our gig. And I just kind of really addressed it about a week before, saying, look, we need to stay focused on mission. We don't want to creep because that'll get us in trouble. And then I come back one day, I say, hey, what do you think about a literacy program? She goes, what? We can't? And I go, yeah, I know, but it could work out, let's try it. So we didn't have any expertise, but I said, let's approach it the way we do everything. Let's get some people together that know what's going on. Let's get some kids together, and let's talk to teachers. Let's talk to parents. So we started setting up these sessions every Saturday. And we would have a parent teach one. We would have, sometimes it was reading books. We brought in a poet. We brought in a group that makes little books so that they can make their own book and write their own stories. And then we had a girl that was 10 years old, neighborhood girl that I'd worked with. I did some after school programs with the school across the street. And she said, could I do a program? And we said, sure, why not? So she comes in, she did a program, it was amazing. The kids were paying attention the whole time. She brought snacks. She could tell when they were getting restless. She took them out and had them pick up paper and on the block, trash and all, bring it back, come back in. And we were just really impressed. Wow. And then we were told that PBS was going to stop by, shoot a little clip of what we were doing. And I mentioned to her, and she goes, well, can I do that session? And I'm like, what could go wrong? Yeah, let's do it. And again, she was amazing. She had everybody dress up in their fantasy. They had to write a fantasy story.
Cool.
They had to read their own story to the peers that were at the program. They had to dress up. So we had knights and princesses and all those kind of great things you see.
Yeah.
We went into the park that we made last year right across from the station. And they read the books and all. It was just fantastic. It was just really, really good. And a couple of ladies came out from PBS that said, do you mind if we join in? And they just jumped in and helped the kids making books, writing stories and everything else. So it turned out really well. It was a nice endeavor. And I don't know if we're going to continue doing that, but we do have an agreement with the library that they bring the bookmobile around on Wednesdays after school. So that may be our connection there, is by making it available to other people.
Yeah. That's still a good thing to have, even if you don't have the program.
Yeah.
So she was 10 when she was doing that. What is she doing now? Is she still around or like helping you guys or?
Oh, yeah. Well, she's 11 now.
Okay.
And we spoke to her mom. We go in every Saturday and we do little projects around there. Last year, we got a grant with the school to put that little park in next to us on a vacant lot. Yeah. So we work on that a little bit. We work around the station. And we have parents in the community that come in and they ask us if we would mentor their kids. They have one is a young man that's in high school. He does well, but you know what it's like in high school. I had enough. I'm out of here. I don't need to educate, that whole thing.
Yeah.
And she's worried that's what's going to happen. And her husband's a little more relaxed, saying, well, he'll find out on his own. Well, she don't want to hear that.
Right.
So he's a great kid. He just comes in every Saturday. His sister now comes in. So we talked to the 10-year-old, now 11-year-old, and said, we want to bring her in here. Can she come down on Saturdays too? So she's going to start coming in on Saturdays with us at least once a month, maybe twice a month, and just kind of help us out.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's really fun, if you give them enough space. My theory is that you just kind of build a fence.
Right.
You say, okay, as long as you're inside this thing, we're okay,
Right.
and let's see some new ideas. Try something that's different and plan on failing. You got to fail.
Yeah.
You've got to fail before you succeed. It's just the way it works. And so we just kind of let it roll that way.
Very cool. I bet they love it.
I think for the most part they do. They keep showing up.
Yeah, that's a good sign.
That's a real good sign. Yeah.
So Urban Station, you mentioned the station a couple times. That's your project. That's your kind of thing. You want to tell us about that?
Yeah. After I left the company, I was really enjoying my life. I was like 69 years old, going to lunch with my friends. I had a buddy I'd meet for a beer after work on Thursdays. I said, life's good. I see it coasting like this the rest of the way.
Yeah.
And my wife said, you know what? You need a project. You need to focus on a project. And I was kind of like, oh boy, it's going to be a home repair thing, which I'm awful at. And then she said, why don't we buy that old gas station down there? It's been vacant for 10 years. And where the park is now, the little lot we put in, it used to be an old confectionery building. That's where my studio was in the 90s. Yep. And I thought, well, that's kind of unique, kind of coming back to that same street corner. It's a major intersection. I'm a big believer in curb appeal, especially at intersections by schools, government buildings, churches, things like that. And so we pursued the idea. I knew who it was that owned it, and she didn't really want to sell it, but she didn't really have an idea for it. Right now, it was storing a large number of boxes full of books and books, records, and vintage clothing. Okay. And I said, well, why don't we work out a deal? Maybe you can open up a store here on Saturdays after work. We can find a spot and all that. But she didn't really want to sell them. So, okay. And her husband said, we've got 2 houses in this gas station. The gas station gets graffitied about, every 3 weeks. Right. And, it's got brown spots and green spots, and the door's broken out, windows broken. And he said, I'd really like to get rid of it, So he helped out a lot. And finally she said, okay. So we bought it. We went in and cleaned it out. They cleaned out a lot of it for us, but we cleaned out the rest of it. And then we coupled up with KU again. I called them again. They had built that stage for me in Epic Park, and they'd built a greenhouse for me at the farm and a tool shed. So I called them again. I said, I got another one here. What do you want to do? So they came out, and they just every semester, like I said, they take on a project that just makes it better and better all the time. So that's kind of where that came from. And I wanted, when Diasan's idea was to start UrbanWorks, she was the one that had the idea. After I told her, we had a conference in Philadelphia, and I said, I'm going to be leaving, and I want you to move into the spot. It should be paved and all that kind of stuff. And she said, well, I don't know. Maybe we should continue this work another way. And I think it was her and one of the other gentlemen that had been working. They came up with the name, and we just kind of said, okay, let's just go from there. I always say it was in an Irish pub. So don't go to an Irish pub with the Oslin, or you're going to come out of there with a new profession.
Yeah.
But that's really kind of how it started. And we really wanted to continue the same types of things. We wanted to use art. We wanted to support art initiatives, greening initiatives, and entrepreneurialism, as well as we stated it. But I think that's more like mentoring, really, that we're talking about, not necessarily. At one time, we thought we'd try to encourage the kids to develop their own little business at a project during the summer and all, but that's a little more involved. And not that mentoring's not, but mentoring, you can cover a lot of other areas as well. So we thought that was best. So that's really the focus of UrbanWorks.
Cool. Yeah.
Oh, and the station? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I was like, what were we talking
about? That was one of the first projects for UrbanWorks, was to help out with the station. So, cleaning it, straightening it up, all that kind of stuff. And we have a kitchen in there now. We have a dining room like with this big long table. We do things out front. We cooked about 40 hot dogs a few weeks ago for kids in the neighborhood just come by and have. And I want to, it's still growing on me what it's going to be. But I see the station as a place, it's going to be a home for UrbanWorks that UrbanWorks can work out of. So we had these big bay areas out back that I've kind of divided in half and said, okay, this is where UrbanWorks can put all the tables up to do all their art classes, dance classes, all that. And we have outdoor space and we have the park. So free reign, whatever you want. And then I've got some garden stuff out back and I've got bees and I'm kind of moving away. I want to put in a small greenhouse, some hydroponics just for the science part of it for the kids. So we're kind of converting the urban station, not so much from a food production place, but more from a learning center of types. It's like, this is how you do this, there's an example of it and maybe help some people do those. And not concentrate so much on growing your own food as much as let's look at the whole environment. Let's see how all this stuff goes together, where the bees fit, the birds, the butterflies, all the plants. You don't have to have a lawn that looks like a golf course. Okay. It's not good for nature, quite frankly. And then the back part of the station is a big open area. And I have bees back there. And then we had these horse troughs that we would grow plants in, and they could do tomatoes, melon, potatoes. They grew about 80 pounds of potatoes this summer or last spring. And, but it's not big enough for a lot of production and the ground itself is extremely compressed and hard. So I'm going more for what we did a little bit of at the farm was curiosity crops. I want kids to see things that they read about and they never see in the city. Yeah. So we'll have a little patch of wheat. We have some buckwheat. I have some cotton right now that's growing out there. And then most of the other things we have out there are flowers, things for the bees to have. We have a great stand of goldenrod, which all of our people that have allergies hate. And it's pretty bad, but it's a great food source for bees at the end part of the season. Yeah. And they're killing it right now. They're bringing it in. They're bringing it in.
Nice. That's so cool.
So that's what we're kind of turning back into. And the little park we put in has 5 fruit trees and 8 berry bushes. And then half of it is native plants, showing how you can grow those together and everything. And then open space.
Yeah, that's what I want to learn more about is landscaping with native prairie plants.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's so cool.
Yeah.
I'd love to turn my yard into that.
Yeah. And well, my front yard here, we have a strip of grass in the right of way out by the street, but that's all the grass in my yard. It's either clover or plants the rest of the time. And it takes a little work to get there, but it's pretty low maintenance after that. And you can hide weeds, native plants.
Yeah.
Weeds show up big time on the lawn.
Yeah, definitely.
But they can grow over there a little bit and have their own little space. And quite frankly, a lot of things we call weeds are great for pollinators and everything else. Great for the soil.
It's true. Yeah. Very cool. And the urban station is where you have your Friday coffee, which we talked about a little bit before we went live, but you want to talk about it just a little bit more, kind of how that came about and what you guys do.
Yeah. I started that when we had my wife and I were running the studio back in 1995. And a lot of my, hi, Kitty, a lot of my art directors and creatives I would meet with for advertising photography didn't live in Wyandotte County. And sometimes I get this thing about, well, we want to come over there, but is it really safe? Or, or they come in and say, do I have to lock my door? All that kind of stuff. And I'd say, well, just come on over. So I decided that and I also didn't like to work on Fridays. Friday was my day. The afternoon, that's my time in the studio. Everybody out, I get to play for a while. Yeah. So I said, well, let's just start off with fun. Let's just do coffee. Let's just invite people for coffee. We'll bring some of these clients in so they can meet people from the neighborhood. And we used a lot of normal people, as you say, for modeling for a lot of the advertising. So a lot of these people got to meet the people that were going to be an ad coming up and all. And it was pretty fun. At the time, we had a kitchen in there and I'd fix pasta every Friday morning with tons of garlic. So everybody smelled like garlic the rest of the day. But we'd have pasta, we have cinnamon rolls. We had a hunter in our community here that would come in and bring pheasant sometimes. Yeah, it was pretty. He left the feet on him, so everybody freaked out, but it was fine. They're easy to handle that way. So that's how we kind of started that. And like I said, we started that in 1995, and it ran the whole time we were at the studio. And then when I left there, I got a smaller studio at the Kansas building here. People would show up on my porch at Friday morning, like, "Where's the coffee?" Like, "What?" So, okay, come on in. So we would have coffee. We did that for a while, and then I moved it down there. And then I went to work for CHWC. I moved it up there on Fridays. And then when I left, I moved it back down, and it's in the station. Yeah, it's great. And, it's, that's been running for 25 years, something like that. And that's pretty cool in itself. But it's just, we've kept it, no agendas. I've been to so many coffees where there's a 25-minute program and I'm dying. I just can't get out of there fast enough. So we don't do any of that. It's just come in, everybody comes in, has an agenda, but you have to work one-on-one, you're not going to do a show for everybody. You're going to pull them over in the corner and tell them what you need.
Yep.
And that works great. We have neighbors, my own dog, my wife brings the dog down on Fridays. There's 2 other dogs in the neighborhood. They come down, the dogs play out back and around the station. There's a young lady in the neighborhood that raises ducks. She brought some ducks in a couple of weeks ago. We got the dogs out, and she ended up giving the ducks away to a lady that was just visiting for the day. And so she walked off with a box with 6 ducks in it. So that's kind of cool. I like that kind of stuff to happen. That's pretty neat.
That's so cool. Something unexpected just from people coming together, which is really cool.
Yeah. And my wife's a legislator, and the Oslin's running for the school board. So I sent them down both, and I said, "I don't want politics in here. I don't want it in here. It ruins so many things."
Yeah.
And they go, "Oh, yeah. Well, all their friends come down. We've usually got, some elected officials there. We got some other people running for office there, and it's fine. It mixes it. I just gave up on Fridays, whatever on Fridays. I'm here having fun. And then, it's going to happen, and so whatever. You can't fight City Hall, as they say.
No.
and those connections pay off sometimes, sometimes just for knowledge base and all. It's not like Tom Pendergrass or anything, and you just put down the hammer and things happen. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
But you're able to get a voice in. And I, like you mentioned, lobbying taught me that the whole idea of lobbying is to convince someone else that your project's more important than anyone else's.
Right.
And that's how you get things done.
Yeah, which is important. Definitely.
It is. You can go, I quit going to meetings probably 10 years ago, and they're fine for some, it works out great. Not for me.
Yeah.
Not for me. I always say boots on the ground.
Yep.
Boots on the ground.
Say that.
Yeah.
Yep, definitely. I'm that way too. So my last question is, what are some of the biggest challenges that you have faced with UrbanWorks and Urban Station, and maybe like the one or two biggest things that are kind of hurdles for you guys?
Well, I should say funding. That's the first thing you should say. But, quite frankly, it works out. We find a way. And volunteers have never been a problem for us. I would say it's 2 things. One is talking somebody into doing something they don't want to do. And that takes some time. And oftentimes it's regulations, ordinances, things like that. Many times the ordinances aren't quite up to date with what's going on at the time. And, to be reasonable, they can't follow every trend down the street. It just doesn't work that way. Right. So sometimes you have things that are just, you just can't believe did somebody make this just to stop people from ever doing anything different or what? Yeah. But it seems like it. I would say those are big ones. And maybe we've been pretty blessed because of volunteers, because of support, things like that, of the people around us, that we've been pretty lucky in that way. There's not too many. I mean, everything doesn't always go our way, but they're just things.
Right.
Just keep moving.
Learn to adapt, and yeah. Sounds like you guys have a great community, so that's helpful.
We do. We have a really good community.
Awesome. Well, those are all my questions. And before we finish up, I just want to make sure that we didn't miss anything. Is there anything else that we didn't cover? I feel like we covered a lot, but
I think we covered most things. A lot of our focus is on the kids. I believe that, kids in their 20s and late, teenagers, sometimes they're not listening, they got their own thing. Young people in their 20s are still teachable, I think, but people get to be 30 years old and they're like, nah, I got it. I got it. You can't tell me nothing. So I figure it's the kids. Get to the kids quick. So we like to start with preschoolers up to about 11 years old. We always encourage them. Everyone's always welcome. And we do work with high school kids and middle school kids and all, but we try to focus them on work projects, things like that. They're better working with physical type things. Whereas the kids are just amazing. I'm just going to tell you a short story here. We have, I don't know, we have some kids. No, there's probably 8 or 9 of them right around the station, tightly packed. And there's this one young boy, he's in elementary school. His name's Lalo. And if we want something, if we want kids, I just find him. He's always around. He comes by and says hi to me before he goes to school every day. He comes by at night. Lalo, get the kids. Boof, he's out. Pretty soon here he is with 15 kids, to do something. So we try to do an activity with him or whatever, because otherwise they're always hanging out in front of the station. And if we're not doing something creative there with them, if they don't have that connection, there'll be windows broken intentionally or unintentionally. Other things will be broken. There'll be trash. But we'll give them treats and things like that as long as they pick up the trash, and we just kind of work our deal that way. So I think that's a big one for us. We really focus on kids and volunteers because we couldn't do anything without volunteers.
Right.
We really couldn't.
Oh yeah.
I'm too old to lift all that stuff, and I know Diasen doesn't want to do it all.
Yeah.
But we have, Diasen and I, even though we have kind of different companies right now, we constantly work together. We still see the same vision. We still see ourselves as being part of the same package and all. She's just the boss now in her area. I can go to my area if I don't agree.
Right. Exactly. You guys are doing your own things, but sometimes they overlap.
They do. They do.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, it was so great to talk to you. And I'm like fired up now. I'm like, go make a community garden or something. Just thank you so much for taking time out of your day to talk to me. And with that, we'll wrap it up. And thank you everybody for watching. And we will see you next Wednesday.
See you at coffee.
All right, cool. Thank you so much. And
Bye.
I'll try to stop by a Friday coffee sometime.
Sounds great. Sounds great.
Bye.
Bye.